The clockmaker's secret. In the small, foggy town of Eldermist, time moved differently. The streets were lined with cobblestones, and the air always carried the faint scent of rain, even on sunny days. But the most peculiar thing about Eldermist was the clock tower that stood at the center of town. Its hands never moved, frozen at 11:59, as if the town itself was holding its breath. 16-year-old Lila had always been fascinated by the tower. Her grandfather, a retired clockmaker, had told her stories about it when she was little. "There's a secret hidden in that tower," he would say, his eyes twinkling. "A secret that could change everything." But Lila's grandfather had passed away 2 years ago, taking his secrets with him. Now, Lila spent her afternoons after school working at his old clock repair shop, tinkering with gears and springs, trying to keep his legacy alive. She had always felt a strange connection to the tower, as if it was calling to her. One rainy evening, as Lila was closing up the shop, she found an old, dusty key hidden in the bottom drawer of her grandfather's workbench. It was unlike any key she had ever seen. Its teeth were jagged, and it glowed faintly in the dim light. On the keychain was a small tag that read, "For the tower." Her heart raced. Could this be the key to the clock tower? Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and ran through the rain-slicked streets, the key clutched tightly in her hand. When she reached the tower, she hesitated. The door was old and weathered, covered in ivy. She took a deep breath and inserted the key. With a loud click, the door creaked open, revealing a spiral staircase that led up into the darkness. Lila climbed the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the silence. At the top, she found herself in a room filled with gears, pendulums, and clocks of all shapes and sizes. In the center of the room was a massive, ornate clock face, its hands still frozen at 11:59. But something was different. The air felt charged, as if the room was alive. Lila approached the clock and noticed a small, empty slot in its base, a slot that perfectly matched the key she held. With trembling hands, she inserted the key and turned it. The room erupted with sound as gears began to turn, pendulums swung, and the clock hands started to move. The tower was coming to life. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room. "Lila," it said, soft and familiar. She turned and saw a faint, glowing figure standing before her. It was her grandfather. "Grandpa," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I knew you'd find the key," he said, smiling. "This tower isn't just a clock, Lila. It's a gateway, a way to travel through time. But it can only be unlocked by someone with a pure heart and a curious mind. Someone like you." Lila's mind raced. Time travel? But why? What am I supposed to do? Her grandfather's figure began to fade. "The tower has been frozen for a reason, Lila. There's a moment in time, a moment that changed everything. You have the power to fix it. But be careful. Time is fragile, and every choice has consequences." Before she could ask more, he was gone. The room fell silent except for the steady ticking of the clocks. Lila looked at the clock face, which now showed 12 o'clock. She knew what she had to do. Taking a deep breath, she reached out and touched the clock face. The room spun around her, and she felt herself being pulled into a whirlwind of light and sound. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer in the tower. She was standing in the middle of Eldermist, but it was different. The streets were bustling with people, and the air was warm and bright. The clock tower stood tall, its hands moving steadily. Lila realized she had traveled back in time, to the day the tower had stopped. But why? What was she supposed to change? As she wandered through the town, she noticed a young boy sitting on the steps of the clock tower, looking sad and alone. It was her grandfather as a child. She remembered him telling her about the day his best friend had moved away, leaving him heartbroken. It was the day he had decided to become a clockmaker, to fix things that were broken. Lila approached him and sat down. "Hey, she said gently. "Are you okay?" He looked up at her, surprised. "Not really," he admitted. "My friend is leaving today and I don't know what to do." Lila smiled. Sometimes goodbyes are hard, but they can also lead to new beginnings. You never know what amazing things are waiting for you. Her grandfather's eyes widened as if he had just realized something important. "You're right," he said, standing up. "Maybe I can make something of this. Maybe I can build something that lasts." Lila felt a warmth in her chest. She had done it. She had given him the push he needed to follow his dreams. Suddenly, the world around her began to blur, and she was pulled back into the whirlwind. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the tower, the clock hands frozen once more at 11:59. But something had changed. The air felt lighter, and the town outside seemed brighter. Lila knew she had made a difference. As she left the tower and walked back to the shop, she felt a sense of peace. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. Time was a gift, and every moment was worth cherishing. The end.